ancient moss-covered stone castle hidden deep in a magical forest, with a young girl with wild brown hair and curious green eyes standing at the entrance, holding a small, glowing key. The castle towers partly visible through mist and towering trees, warm golden light from inside the castle, digital painting style, rich greens and golds. Deep in the heart of the Whisperwood forest, where the trees wore cloaks of emerald moss and the streams hummed forgotten songs, stood an ancient castle. It was a secret place, known only to the birds and the wind. And to Elara. Elara was the castle's keeper of secrets, a girl with wild, tangled hair and eyes that held the quiet of centuries. Her days were spent dusting the velvet thrones and polishing the silver mirrors, never speaking of the wonders she guarded, the enchanted key that could unlock the sky, the tapestry that breathed, and the golden crown that lay in a tower of glass. But today, the crown began to glow, pulsing with a light that whispered of a faraway name. Elara knew then that her job was no longer just to guard, but to find. A young girl with wild, tangled hair stands at the top of a stone staircase inside an ancient castle, facing a glowing glass tower. The crown inside pulses with golden light, and a silver feather shaped like a key gleams at its center. Shadows of stars dance on the walls. Soft moss and ivy creep through the tower's windows, and the scene is lit by warm, magical luminescence. Page 2. Elara tiptoed up the winding staircase, her fingers tracing the cold stone wall. The glow from the crown grew brighter with each step, casting dancing shadows shaped like forgotten stars. At the top, the glass tower shimmered, and the crown thrummed like a heartbeat. Elara whispered a word her grandmother had taught her, a word for summoning courage, and pushed open the crystal door. Inside, the crown hovered above a velvet cushion, and nestled within its golden prongs was a single, silver feather. It was not a bird's feather, it was shaped like a key. Elara knew then that the crown was a compass, and the feather was a path to a mystery she had never dreamed of. A young girl in a flowing cloak stands in a fantasy forest with sapphire blue leaves and glowing streams, holding a silver feather key that points toward a bridge made of shimmering moonbeams, moonlight filtering through the trees, ethereal and magical atmosphere. Elara reached out, her hand trembling, and plucked the silver feather from the crown. The instant her fingers closed around it, the throne room vanished. She was standing in a forest where the trees had leaves of sapphire, and the streams flowed with liquid light. A faint melody hummed through the air, and the feather in her hand pulsed in time. She looked down, and saw that the feather was slowly turning, pointing not north or south, but straight ahead, where the trees parted to reveal a bridge made of woven moonbeams. A young girl with curly dark hair stands barefoot on a bridge made of glowing, woven moonbeams over a stream of liquid light. Sapphire-leaved trees arch overhead. She holds a silver feather that points forward. At the bridge's end, a door of starlight glows softly. Ethereal, dreamlike illustration style, soft blues and silvers, children's book art. Elara stepped onto the moonbeam bridge, her bare feet hardly feeling the cool, glowing strands. Each step sent ripples of silver light across the shimmering surface. Below, the stream of liquid light whispered secrets in a language she almost understood. The sapphire leaves overhead rustled, and the melody grew clearer. A lullaby her mother used to hum. The feather in her hand tugged gently, urging her forward. At the bridge's end, a door of woven starlight appeared, pulsing with a soft, patient glow. A magical meadow with spiraling violet and gold grass, fireflies forming ancient glowing words in the air, and a central tree with silver bark and blue flame-like blossoms, all under a starry sky. A girl with a glowing feather stands at an open door of woven starlight. Elara paused, her hand hovering over the door's handle. A swirl of captured moonlight. The feather in her other hand felt warm, almost alive, as if it recognized the threshold. She pushed the door open, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of honey and night-blooming jasmine. Beyond lay a meadow unlike any she had seen. The grass grew in spirals of violet and gold, and fireflies danced in patterns that spelled ancient words. In the center stood a tree with silver bark and blossoms of soft blue flame, each petal humming a note of the lullaby. A magical meadow at twilight with spiraling violet and gold grass. Glowing fireflies form a ring around a girl with a feather in her hand. In the center, a tree with silver bark and blue flame blossoms emits a soft humming light. The girl looks down as a glowing petal lands on the feather, which now shines twilight blue. Dreamy, enchanting children's book illustration style. Alara stepped into the meadow, her bare feet brushing the spiraling grass. The violet and gold blades seemed to whisper as she passed, their tips curling like tiny fingers reaching for the sky. The fireflies, still tracing their ancient script, began to gather into a glowing ring around her. Each word they shaped pulsed with a soft light, as if reading itself aloud inside her mind. She felt the humming tree before she saw it. A vibration deep in her chest that matched the lullaby from her dream. The blue-flamed blossoms swayed, and one petal floated down, landing on the feather she carried. In that instant, the feather turned the color of twilight, and a single word echoed from the petal. Remember. A young girl with bare feet and twilight-colored feather in hand kneels at the base of a glowing tree in a meadow. The tree has blue-flamed blossoms and bark carved with luminous symbols. Fireflies form a spiral path leading to the tree roots. Ethereal violet and gold grass surrounds her. The scene is magical, softly illuminated with twilight colors, in a dreamy watercolor style. Alara closed her eyes, and the words sank into her like a stone into still water. She remembered. Not a memory of her own, but a story older than the meadow itself. She saw a great shadow falling over the land, and a queen with hair of silver, who planted the humming tree as a last beacon of light. The vision faded, and when Alara opened her eyes, the fireflies had arranged themselves into a spiral path leading toward the tree's roots. At the base, the bark was carved with symbols that glowed faintly, matching the writing in the sky. She knelt, and the feather in her hand trembled, pulling her toward a hollow in the trunk. Inside lay a small, oval stone, smooth as river glass, pulsing with a gentle warmth. A young girl kneeling at the base of a glowing tree at night, holding a smooth oval stone in her hands, surrounded by a spiral of bright fireflies, with carved symbols glowing on the tree bark, shadows dancing in the clearing, magical and serene. Alara carefully reached into the hollow. Her fingers closed around the stone, and a soft hum vibrated through her palm, like the deepest note of a lullaby. She lifted it out, and the symbols on the bark flared brighter. The spiral of fireflies began to swirl faster, their light casting dancing shadows across the clearing. It's a key, she whispered, though she did not know to what. The feather in her other hand lifted on a breeze she could not feel, pointing toward the heart of the meadow. A young girl with a glowing stone in one hand and a floating feather in the other walks through a moonlit meadow, surrounded by swirling fireflies that form a luminous path ahead. Tall grass parts gently, and soft blue-silver light illuminates her determined face. Alara stepped forward, and the feather tugged her gently, like a friend leading her by the hand. The fireflies parted, creating a path of silver light through the tall grass. As she walked, the stone hummed louder, pulsing in time with her heartbeat. The meadow seemed to hold its breath, and Alara knew she was not just following the feather. It was guiding her toward something ancient, waiting just beyond the next rise. She clutched the stone tight, and did not look back. A young girl in a hooded cloak stands atop a grassy hill at twilight, looking down at a moonlit grove of ancient, moss-covered stone statues arranged in a circle around a central pedestal. Fireflies drift through the air, and a glowing feather floats beside her hand. She crested the hill and gasped. Below, a grove of statues stood silent, their stone eyes seeming to watch her. Each one was carved like a guardian from a forgotten time, covered in moss and winding ivy. In the center, a single pedestal rose, empty but for a small indentation shaped exactly like her stone. A girl placing a glowing stone into a hollow pedestal in a grove of moss-covered statues, stone eyes watching, ground trembling with green light. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the shimmering stone. It hummed against her palm, warm as sunlight. Step by step, she walked into the grove, the statues, gazes following her, until she stood before the empty pedestal. With a deep breath, she placed her stone into the hollow. A low rumble shook the ground, and the moss began to glow. A girl standing in an enchanted grove as stone animal statues come to life, glowing moss spreading at her feet, a tall stone fox bowing before her with a warm smile, soft golden light from a shimmering stone on a pedestal. The glowing moss spread like a soft green river across the stone, and the statues began to stir. Their stiff limbs cracked, and their stone eyes blinked into life. One by one, they turned their heads toward her, not with anger, but with slow, ancient smiles. The tallest statue, a fox with ears as tall as trees, stepped down from its base and bowed. "Thank you, little dreamer," it said, its voice like rustling leaves. "You have brought the heart back to the Whispering Grove." A glowing green moss path winding through an ancient stone grove, with statues of wolves, deer, and owls slowly coming to life, their stone eyes glowing amber. A tall fox statue with moss-covered ears smiles down at a small girl with wide eyes, bathed in soft magical light. Alara blinked, her breath catching as the fox statue's amber eyes glowed softly. "But I didn't mean to," she whispered. "I just followed the light." The fox's stone ears twitched, and moss crinkled around its muzzle like a smile. "That's always how it begins," it said. It gestured with a great paw toward the grove, where the other statues, wolves, deer, and owls, were stretching their limbs, shedding centuries of gray dust. A path of glowing moss now led through the trees, pulsing like a heartbeat. "Come," the fox rumbled. "The grove has waited long enough to show you its secret." A child's hand reaching toward a massive oak tree, split by a seam of golden light in a magical forest. Glowing moss on the ground, and stone animals, fox, owl, deer, wolves, shedding their gray dust and coming to life, with soft amber and green glows. Ethereal, warm lighting, children's book illustration style, detailed, and slightly whimsical. Alara followed the fox, her steps light on the glowing moss. The statues moved around her, their stone cracking into fur and feather as they shook off the ages. An owl blinked its emerald eyes, a deer shook its antlers free of lichen, and the wolves stretched their stiff legs. The fox stopped at a towering oak, whose trunk was split by a seam of golden light. "Beyond this door," it said, "the grove remembers. Touch the bark, and it will teach you the song that woke us." Alara reached out, her fingers brushing the glowing seam, and the world swelled with a hum like ancient wind through hollow bones. A young girl touches a glowing golden seam in an ancient oak tree, her face illuminated by warm light, surrounded by awakened stone animals, an emerald-eyed owl, a lichen-antlered deer, and stretching wolves, all watching her as she begins to sing, in an enchanted forest with luminous moss and dancing shadows. The hum rose through Alara's fingertips, filling her chest with warmth. The golden seam widened, and she saw the grove as it had been long ago, trees dancing, creatures singing, and a silver thread of melody weaving through everything. A stag stepped to her side and bowed its head. "Remember us," it whispered. "Sing what you hear." Alara opened her mouth, and the first note trembled on her lips like a newborn star. A young girl with flowing hair stands in a glowing forest grove, her mouth open in song, a luminous note leaving her lips. A majestic stag with silver antlers bows beside her, while trees and creatures sing, their forms outlined in golden light. The sky is warm amber and pink. The note left Alara's lips and floated into the air like a feather of light. It touched the stag's antlers, and silver sparks showered down, waking each blade of grass. One by one, the trees began to hum, their leaves chiming like tiny bells. The creatures joined in, their voices weaving together into a tapestry of sound. Alara felt the old song settle into her bones, as if she had always known it. She sang louder, and the golden seam swelled, casting a warm glow that pushed back the shadows. The world around her was healing, one note at a time. A serene forest scene at dusk, with a young girl standing in a clearing, her mouth slightly open as if singing. A soft golden glow surrounds her, and the last traces of a seam of light are fading into the air. The trees and animals are peaceful and bathed in warm light, with tiny sparkles floating like dust motes. With a final, shimmering note, the golden seam closed with a soft sigh. The forest was whole again, every leaf and creature bathed in a gentle, golden light. Alara smiled, knowing the song would live on in her heart, ready to be sung whenever it was needed. A young girl with a peaceful smile walks through a sunlit forest path, golden light filtering through the leaves. Behind her, the trees and flowers glow with a soft, warm radiance. In the distance, a few small animals peek out from the bushes, and the sky is a clear, gentle blue. Alara turned from the mended forest and walked home through the dappled sunlight, her heart humming a quiet, joyful tune. In the days that followed, the children would ask her to sing the song of the golden thread, and she always did, her voice carrying the warmth of the forest itself. And so the meadow, the woods, and all who lived there remembered that some magic is not just seen, but sung.